All right. Hey, everybody. Good morning to you all on October, I have to look, 23rd. That's how quickly the fall is flying by
Yeah.
here on the .NET show. October 23rd, 2024. Rich Ross is here with me. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. Doing well. Doing well. Feeling better. Was a little under the weather earlier in this week, so it's good to be back. Sounding somewhat normal. Still getting there. But
Yeah. No, I hear you. And it's that time of year. It's that time of year for
yeah.
like right when the weather turns, it seems. That's
We've had a lot of that. It's been turning back and forth, where, it was warm yesterday and a little bit more warm today, and then we get cold again. So everybody's
yeah,
going to
right.
be soon.
Right. Warming up a little bit here in the Northeast, or at least where we are in the Philadelphia region, and then maybe cooling back down afterwards, I'm sure. So that's always fun. And here we are on the Dev Talk Show. And if you've been following along, you know that we have been designing and planning for an app that we're going to work with you folks on stream. And so the title that you're seeing right now, if you're watching live, is saying it's file new Blazor in .NET 9, which we might get to today. We'll see. If I have to change the title for YouTube, then we can do that. But just to set the expectation, I think we're going to look at that, and we're also going to look. Let me make sure I have the name of this correct. We're going to look at a product in Azure called Data API Builder today, which was new to me.
That's the plan. Yes.
Yeah, that was something I hadn't heard of, which is it's only been I think it was in preview beginning I'm guessing approximately a year ago, and it's generally available now. And that's just, I guess, how it is with Azure is that very hard to keep up with absolutely everything. But
it is funny. It's under the Azure bits. I mean, yes, it connects to all the Azure pieces, but it is its own open source project, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
it's publicly available. You can modify it and do the things you need to, I guess, potentially include your own database behind it. But
yes, so it's open source, and from what I can tell, most of the implementation appears to be through a .NET tool.
yes.
So I appreciate what you're saying, is that it's interesting. Maybe it's that just the team ownership, I suppose. But what's neat about it is that so it's got the naming Azure Data API Builder, but then when you really see what it produces, one of the targets is a container, and you can use that any way you'd like. So
yeah, and there's a whole section in there about contributing back to those as well. So that's pretty cool.
That was really interesting. So getting back to what we're doing, if you're new, is there is a user group app that we're looking to build that loosely modeled after needs for the Philly.net user group, which meets here in the Northeast once a month. And, generally you want to have a place where users can or developers, members of your group. I wanted to use the term user group there, so I called them users, right? But users of your app can see what are the upcoming events, sign up for them, have your little calendar. And then so there's definitely a need for the ability to manage that. And then that immediately you start talking about things like authentication, and then where are you going to store this stuff. And so those are some of the things we wanted to explore. So
yeah, and we started going down the path of whiteboarding out some of those components and just kind of very roughly start thinking about what the application might need from a data model, from how we might store that data, whether it's NoSQL, SQL, and just kind of started to block that out. And we did that all in the previous video. And now this time it's getting a little closer. Just, I think we have enough to kind of get started. Maybe we head down the path of starting to put that project together.
Yeah, right. All right. So that begs the question. And there are some technologies new to me. It's not, when I say new to me, it's I've known about them, I may have even played with them for an afternoon, but it's not the same thing as trying to actually go build something on top of. So
Yeah.
I think for me, static web apps and how you configure that will be interesting. And when I say configure, there's more to it. I'm sure we could deploy the static web app, but now you want it to support some authentication, and authorization, and you want it to maybe be at a custom domain, and then now we also want it to be able to talk to an API on the back end that we may be prototyping here with the data API builder. So a lot of interesting new stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So where do we want to
How
start?
should we get started? Yeah.
So there's two ways we can go. One is we do have to have a home for this, and maybe we go to and create a repository somewhere where we can start putting all this content. And that content is not only the code that we're going to do, but also maybe the project and the issues that we create for to kind of build this out. Maybe that's a good starting point.
Okay.
The other option is just to jump right in and do file new project because everybody wants to do that. So there's there's that balance, right?
Yeah, certainly that's the fun part. I suppose.
And if you want, I can. Do you want to share? Or do you want me to drive? Or
well, I was trying to think. I went to the DevTalkShow on GitHub.
Yep.
And do we need to have a repository to explore the data API builder? Or is that where you need to have a data connection to use?
No, you don't need the repository to do. You don't need. I mean, if we wanted to just do this locally, you wouldn't need the repository.
Okay.
So it just yeah, it just depends how far back, how much of a baseline do we want to kind of get to, right? And that was why I was thinking the repository is a place just to kind of, we got a place to store our code. This way you and I can share code.
Yeah.
Others can see the code that we wind up doing because we'll do this in the, the open manner.
Yep. All right. Well, we certainly need that. So if you want, I do have the GitHub repository open.
Cool.
Of course, that means I have to. Let's see. Okay.
Cool.
All right. So this is the TheDevTalkShow on GitHub. There are some repositories here. Some of them are private, some of them are public. But here's this, and it says interesting view as a public user. Oh, okay. So this is the view you would see then.
Right. That's kind of what we're sharing out, right?
Right. And we want to create a new repository. So I'm going to click on the new button. That's, to be fair, I haven't. I see. That's right. Maybe I have repository template. Okay. I haven't explored that feature before. Repository template. That's an interesting one.
So that's pretty cool. If you have a, let's say you're working, you're in an organization where, hey, your project needs to have this kind of a structure, or here's the, we're all rallying off of this one code base, here's the,
right.
kind of a way to pull that in, and then some templates around how we capture issues, right? If you can include things like that in there, because it's not just the code and the structure, but it's also the other things that make up the repository. So you could do that, define it as a template in your environment, and then anytime you create a new one, you get to choose those. So those are some cool things that you can do if you're in the GitHub space. But it doesn't even need to be a GitHub enterprise space, because we're just doing this as a regular one-off account. So
right. So I don't have a cool application name where there are some people who have done some live coding, and then they have these really cool application names like ready to go when they start building the app. I don't have that. We can stick with user group app for now.
We could, but then we're locked into the repo, right?
Okay.
Let's see. So do you have, okay, we're going to try something here. Do you have in the upper right-hand corner at the top? Oh, you don't have Copilot there.
No.
I was going to say we could ask Copilot to make up a cool code name. Let me see if I can do that here. General purpose chat. Ask Copilot. We are creating an app to track users, our user group. Can you provide a cool code name for this app? Let's see what it comes up with.
Okay.
So we asked the wrong Copilot. So GitHub Copilot came back and said, I can't generate creative content, but I can help with the technical aspects of your project. So we asked the wrong Copilot here.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Because one of the things it does do well when you're in the IDE is it will give you good names or give good suggested names for methods or variables or things of that nature. Because as we're finding out, naming is hard.
Yeah, right. Interesting that I can't say that I've tried using the Copilot built in to Edge, and I'm not sure if it's really built. I think I'm just at copilot.microsoft.com, and I think it wants to talk to me because it's asking me what voice to use. But
oh wow, okay.
I'm just curious if it will talk or if it'll answer me. So I actually just asked that question. Let's see what it says here. We're building an app to manage our user group. What are some cool code names for the software project? That came across, right? Okay.
Yep, that's it.
Says, how about Orbit? It suggests smooth, organized movement and connection. Other fun ideas could be Pulse, Catalyst, or Nexus. I'm going to ask.
I always like a good space theme. Go ahead.
Any more ideas? Just
yeah, there you go.
HubNet, SyncStream, PulsePoint, Flux, and Lumina. Interesting. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
That it said there. I didn't think Orbit was that bad.
No,
what I could also say is if I like the idea of Orbit, what are some other names built? I wonder if it'll understand what I'm saying here. I mean, maybe. I like the idea of Orbit. What are some other names built around that word as a base for the code name? Orbital, Orbit Sync, Orbit Hub, Orbit Works, Orbit Flow. Okay, cool. All right.
Orbital's not bad.
Like this?
I think that's fine. Yeah. It's just a code name. And the code name's always cooler than the real. Well, if the code name is cool, then the real name is bad. If the code name is terrible, the real name will be good. So there's always that balance. We can't go too good on the code name.
All right. So I usually personally, and this is where we can always, these are tips that people may not be aware of. I generally, if I'm initializing a repository that is born on GitHub, sometimes I start them locally and then move them to GitHub. Yeah. And I'll almost always add a README file so that there's something committed.
Yep.
I tend to click Git ignore template and pick the Visual Studio one.
I love it.
The Visual Studio one, in some respects, could have been called, in my opinion, like Microsoft-based developer.
Okay.
Because it holds much more than Visual Studio Git ignores. It has ignore extensions for all kinds of common tooling that a Microsoft developer or a developer using Microsoft products and other products too, things for databases, like SQL Server, things for SSIS, for projects using the developer studio that comes with that. Visual Studio Code ignores. So it's just this real comprehensive git ignore template that a lot of people might not know about, because they might come here and click on it, and then they might type like C and then say, okay, well, I'm not really seeing one. I see a C one, but I don't really see one that says C#. So maybe this will help somebody. Maybe everybody here watching already knows about the Visual Studio template. And then I think for the license, are we at none right now, and we'll pick it later, or pick something like MIT?
We should put something in there. The MIT's one I usually default to.
Okay. All right. Create the
There we go.
repository. So that's there. And now, quite frankly, even though there really isn't anything going on there yet, I can put into the chat the link to the brand new repository, and we'll get it into the show notes as well.
Yep.
All right. So that is done. And what do we think the next step is here?
So we probably should bring that down so we can have a place to put our file new project into.
Okay. So for me, that is opening the Windows terminal.
Yep.
And
yep.
I
so
haven't
as well.
I haven't updated Oh My Posh in a little bit, it looks like. So I'm getting a reminder. Whoops, I don't want to exit, but I will clear it. But the neat thing is that the creator of Oh My Posh has worked so hard to make that super easy. Because I used Winget to install it, the Winget upgrade works pretty well. I've been using that for a while, but now it's built into the product. So you just say like, Oh My Posh upgrade, and boom, it just works. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
So,
I didn't know that. That's cool.
that's pretty recent that I've seen that. So pretty neat. So, so here I am. I happen to be in Windows Terminal, and what I've noticed is when I change the zooming in here, I usually have to hit enter a couple times to kind of get it back to. On the right hand side, I have what cloud am I logged into. That's
Azure.
Just how. Yeah. I don't really. I have a very minimal terminal prompt. Some people will. I mean, it's really interesting stuff. Like it'll have like the time and things like that. So all I need to do is I want to git clone, and that's interesting that it's making some suggestions. I tend to. This is pretty old fashioned the way I do it, because now you can open straight in Visual Studio. I mean, you could use the GitHub CLI, but I'm still pretty old fashioned where I grab this clipboard, I get this on the clipboard and paste it in, and there you go. So now we're here.
Right there with you.
And I can hit code. I can say code dot to jump directly into VS Code and see that really the only thing in this file is that Visual Studio git ignore. That is here.
Yep.
And like I said, I said it is much, Visual Studio Profiler. I mean, code coverage tools, lots of common things that a developer uses. But I would say generally, I mean, look, JetBrains Writer is there. So there's all kinds of stuff. All right. And then we have our license and our README. Three minutes ago. Cool. Nice. It's all there. I'm not sure if I'm getting that from GitLens. I might be.
Oh, okay.
I might be. I forget because, like everything. Yeah, I do have GitLens. No, yeah, here it is. I do have GitLens installed. It's interesting that it wants me to restart the extensions. Maybe it's because there was an update. So, well, that's part of it too. All right. Okay, so we just have our very simple GitHub repository.
Yep. So now inside this repository, we probably want to create a project, I would think.
Yeah. And let's see, we can do that from Visual Studio Code.
Yep.
although I'm not 100% sure. First, I need the command
Control
palette.
Shift.
So
Yep.
Control Shift
And
P to
.NET,
bring up
right?
the command palette. The other thing that I think could trip some people up is, which is what I just did. I went and clicked up here, but this is not the command palette yet. It's just a search, right?
True.
So Control Shift P, C#. No matching commands. Do I really not have the C# extensions installed? Because I have a whole lot installed. Okay, well, I have C# dev kit. I was going to say, is it really just .NET new project, maybe?
I think so. That's what I was going with.
Okay. I've been signed out. Oh, but okay, interesting. So it all came back up. Searching for the template. A lot of times, if you watch the show in the past, you've seen us do this in the Visual Studio IDE. But we want a Blazor WebAssembly standalone app, I believe, because even if I pick Blazor web app, then we're going to get, and it could be WebAssembly based, but it would still be hosted on a server.
You would get two. You're going to get two projects regardless, right? But we still get the client project and the server side project.
Well, if our target here is static web apps, I think you don't in a standalone app.
Oh, okay.
So there's we've never really explored this from the Visual Studio IDE, but there is Blazor Server, Blazor Web, which is just a shortcut way to say I want a server-based app that uses Blazor Server, so it uses Blazor interactivity. And actually, we don't really want Blazor Server app. What we want, what people normally reach for is Blazor Web app. Some of these other ones they're artifacts of how Blazor used to be. You made that choice at the beginning. And so that would be Blazor WebAssembly app or Blazor Server app. But I believe if we want Blazor WebAssembly standalone app, which again, we're not getting the richer description that comes in the IDE, but I'm going to choose this one because I believe this is the one that would be compatible for static web apps. There may have to be some changes made to it, but we'll see. So I pick that, and it says Blazor app 1. I guess I'll just call it orbital, and I'm going to say orbital.web as a hedge, because there may be more than one project in this solution. Yeah.
I think it makes sense.
We might change that name later. And so it's going to be created here, which is fine. I think I'm okay with that spot, which is really just it's going to be a subfolder in the root of the project, of the repo. Create the project. So it's doing stuff. And that's that. We've done this with Visual Studio Code now. So I could have actually I happen to be on a Windows machine. I could have been on my Linux machine as well.
Yep. And let me ask you, so I've got there's some work going on here. I don't know if that's coming through in the background or not.
A little bit. I've heard some things. Yeah.
Okay. I'll keep the mute off and going, but apologize for that.
Okay. So, if we were to take some time to compare, the program CS is very different in the way the WebAssembly standalone app. It's a very different one. First of all, a different host builder, the add components. And this is it. This is the whole thing. So it is very different.
Much.
Let me build this. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and run it, and then I need to create a launch JSON. We'll say you can see there's some things I haven't done in a while here. I keep getting all kinds of so no. I thought this would be ready to run, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe what I really want to do is if I say .NET build,
Right.
okay, so it restored using .NET 9. Didn't realize it. That's okay. Okay, so the build succeeded.
You got to give the project name, yeah.
Okay. Looks like it did not do an HTTPS one, but that's okay. But here it is.
Okay. And that is a WebAssembly version of our app, right? So it's not.
Yeah.
I know there's a way to look at that, right?
I'd like to take a look at this here. So now I'm in the folder and we can look at the bin folder. And let's see what's in here. Obviously, go to debug. It's a little bit of a rabbit hole, looks like. But I mean,
wow.
There's a bunch of DLLs, but just looking for where the WW
so that's kind of a difference, right?
Folder. Yeah.
Because you wouldn't expect to see that in a normal debug space, because all of those DLLs have to get packaged into the WebAssembly to be thrown down to the client machine, whereas most often the code that is looking to run those DLLs is either sitting on a server or it happens in a place not locally, so I don't need to put them in the debug space.
Yeah, so let's take a look at what that would look like. I mean, I know all we've done is file a new project, but if I look at .NET Publish, I just want to double check here, the output directory. Okay, so if I say .NET, I'm not sure what the default output directory is going to be, so I'm actually just going to say .NET Publish.
And see where it goes.
And see where it goes. If we don't like it, then I'll point somewhere else. But it is building. You can actually run this command without building. I could have done that, but that's okay. I actually think it's doing some interesting things. See how it's now running a little bit there called. So it says it put it in bin release .NET9 publish, which that's reasonable. That's reasonable.
Yeah.
So just to look at this, let's go to bin release .NET9 cd publish, and let's see what's in here. Okay, very different when I publish it. I get a web config, I get a static web assets, which I think is ready for static web apps, so I'm not sure. And then the www, everything, it looks like a lot has been placed into the www root folder, www root folder. And yeah, that feels like something there's even compressed assets here that if you were to copy this straight up, that does it just work, right? Interesting.
That's interesting. Okay.
Okay, so now that's not me following. There is a static web apps with Blazor tutorial sitting out there somewhere. I haven't looked at it, so I don't know. I don't know how well that works. I don't know if that's something we want to do today.
Yeah,
we could certainly try.
I don't think so either, because I think there's other things we can do before we get to actual deployment bit.
Yeah, but the nice thing is I think we have a pathway where we can see just file a new project. Certainly a GitHub action could help us here build and deploy this. But I'm wondering, actually, what if I know this root folder? So if I head back in here and I go to the bin folder release, the publish folder, can I run? See, now what I don't know is if I run live server, the problem that I have is, it doesn't know what I'm looking for. So
right.
I didn't remember if there was a way to run live server from, let's see, live server. Oops, I gotta do command palette. I don't actually want to change that. Open with live server, change live server workspace.
I think you just want to leave it, right?
I think that I can do something else. I think, let's see. Did it not take that? No, it didn't. What if open on remote, open changes? Just trying to figure out how to say, what if I do this? What if I come here and I start another instance of code and now do go live? That didn't do what I wanted. Maybe I had to maybe I had to go one further. So here's an instance of code where the www root folder is the root. And look at that.
Huh.
So I'm sorry that was a little roundabout, but the idea
That's okay.
was to prove that that folder of static assets is ready to go.
Right. You didn't do the run like you did on the other one.
No, this was not using .NET Run. This was just simple. Live Server is an extension, very popular extension for Visual Studio Code. Let me see if I can find it. And it's one of the ones I almost always reach for very quickly. I mean, it only has 55 million downloads, so it's kind of a new project. Sarcasm there. And it has 4 it's crazy. And what Live Server does, and in fact, I think I could probably have done what I wanted. I probably could have. I just would have to read through this. Is what's really neat about it is that you could be working in Visual Studio Code just in a folder. You hit Live Server and boom, it creates a localhost server that you can just see your project. I love it for just vanilla JS type situations, but or any static web app situation. So it could be any commonly used framework that's all front end, 100% front end. It's not going to run
HTML, CSS, JavaScript.
Yeah. It's not going to run a .NET app, a Python app. It's not going to anything with a server backend. It's not going to do that for you. But I just pointing it at that folder, making it the root of my Visual Studio Code workspace, and then clicking Live Server, it runs what's in there. And our index HTML fired up Blazor, and the rest is history. I'm pretty sure that if I F12 here, I'm going to see, and then I guess I can hit network. We're going to see things like Blazor boot JSON came in and Blazor WebAssembly JS came in and .NET JS came in. So we're definitely doing what we want. So a little bit of an aside there, but
kind of, interesting as we're going through this initial part of putting these pieces together and understanding how much of it or how we might get certain parts of it to work in certain ways. So,
right. Okay. So the project works now. Let's see. Is this where we need to try and set up the data API? Or no?
Yeah, that is probably our next step, I would think, because we want to define our model and define how we want to talk to that model. So that would make sense.
Okay. Now, I'm new to a lot of these resources. Is this something you want to walk me through?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
So I'll be honest, I'm a little new to it as well. I've seen a few videos and I've done some looked at some of the tutorials around this, but I think what we need to do first. So the data API builder is supposed to give us, because we talked about it a little bit, but it's supposed to, based on a configuration of the data that we want to share out, look to any one of pretty much all of the databases that you could think of when we get to things in the Azure space, right?
Yeah,
so
you need a connection.
Obviously,
that's the thing. Yeah,
exactly. So we need a connection to Azure. So we need a connection, then we need to go down the path of doing because we want to be able to use Cosmos for this. So it's either we have a container of Cosmos, which we don't, or we just basically spin up a Cosmos environment up in an Azure subscription and then use the connection string into that.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, there's a quick start that uses AZD, but I don't know that. I mean, well, I like AZD, but it kind of gives you the finished product, right?
Yeah. And I think all that's going to do, that AZD, when we look at the tutorial on that one, all that's going to do is basically give us, a Cosmos DB environment. That's it. Exactly. Then we could do that ourselves.
Exactly. So I think that's probably where we want to start, is to say, is we need, and the reason why Cosmos is supported. And so I've never created a Cosmos DB service, but here it's actually,
the other thing it's going to do is it looks like it's also going to create that static web app, that AZD.
Oh, the AZD one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I say AZD, there's a quick start in the documentation. In fact, I might as well just bring it over and show people. There's a quick start that says use data API builder with Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL and Azure static web apps, which is perfect, right? It's perfect. Yep. But and I actually don't think this is a bad thing to learn from, but we've used the Azure Developer CLI on the show before, and what it does is it gives you it can depending on what your template says to do, is give you a complete solution with deployed resources and everything's wired up. And that's cool. That's really great. But I think I'm right about this, Rich, is we're looking to take the steps instead of just having the completed thing, because now we want to know how to do it.
Yeah.
Putting it into an AZD template is not a bad idea. In fact, it's a great idea, but for purposes of what we're trying to do, it'll jump over, I think, a lot of the learning, I think so too. Okay.
Plus, when we're thinking about what we want to do here, we've got a lot of things that by themselves we know we can do, right? So we know we can take a static web app and we can have it talk to a Cosmos DB and have data API builder be that connection between the two, right? That's one thing. We know that there's another lab or a tutorial that shows how do we get our Blazor WebAssembly up into a static web app. And we've got all these pieces, and we've got to, over the course of what we'll do here as we build this out, we've got to have a way of assembling all those pieces together so we get something that makes sense for what we're building, which is a Blazor WebAssembly static web app that talks to Cosmo.
Right. Okay. So in that case, it says here, like, no accounts to display. Does that mean I need to create one?
So you don't have, right. So right now you don't have any Cosmo DB environments in your subscription from the looks of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll click create. And we have been talking about.
We want the one for NoSQL.
Okay.
Because specifically that's what the DAB connects over to.
Okay. Let's see. We're going to need a resource group for this, which.
Yep. Orbital Lab. Because I assume you're looking for the name. There you go.
Oops. Oh, create new is what I really meant.
Oh, there you go.
Because I don't have a resource group yet.
Yes.
So I think we'll do this. And then we create an account name. Okay. Maybe that's okay.
I think that works. As long as it says it's unique, it's fine. And then where do we want, what or region do we want to put our application into?
Okay. And I don't really care too much about the region. It wouldn't let me pick East US, so I guess Central US is probably fine. It looks like it's the only US I can use. Here are the things I don't know. Provision throughput. It says free tier discount. Okay. That sounds good.
Right. So because you don't have any other Cosmo DB instances that are taking advantage of the free tier, you can do that if you have those, if you're acceptable with those constraints around your environment. So 1000 RUs, which is kind of the compute engine, if you think of this particular service, and then total of 25 gigabytes of storage, which I think we're going to be well under with what we're doing here.
Should I pick the serverless mode or the provision throughput?
I think if you pick serverless, you're not going to be able to do the free tier.
Okay. All right.
Right. That went away when you did that?
Yes, you're right. It did.
Okay.
So apply and then limit the total amount of throughput, which it looks like that limit is to prevent provision throughput from being the problem. Okay.
Yep.
That's exactly what I was trying to do. In fact, was say, okay, how do I avoid now? I haven't tried these other tabs before. I don't know that will change anything on them, but like for global distribution, we probably don't.
So this is one of the great things about Cosmo is that you can deploy it around the world, and you can get not only geo redundancy because your data gets copied across those locations, but you can also have it so that each one of those regions becomes a region that I can write data to, and that data can then synchronize across all the other regions. So I don't think we have any need to do any of that because it's probably not going to be used by anybody outside of Philly anyway. So
I feel like maybe for now we'll say all networks, but I wonder if when you go to production, you limit this.
You would definitely want to secure that endpoint a little more than just leaving it out in the open. And we can, what I like to do, especially in a sandbox, if the data is such that, we're at a stage where we can kind of progress through that. I like to get things working and then pull back a little bit on what the security is.
Yeah.
Just because it's less headaches, right? I know, hey, the application can talk to our database. It's all good, but I turned this thing on and now it can't. Okay. Well, I need to either adjust something on the front end so that it can talk to it, or I got to lighten the security on the other thing that I'm talking to, or do security in a different way as opposed to lighten it. So that's the progression I like to take.
I think it makes sense, just as a point of advice, is to try and narrow this as soon as possible in your project state.
Absolutely.
so that you don't get to the end and you're figuring out how to narrow it down, right?
Right. Because oftentimes it'll be somebody at the other end saying, your security guy usually saying, all right, you can't, we have rules. You can't do this, can't do this. So the sooner you know about those, the better.
Right. I think we'll leave it for today. I don't.
Yeah.
I will. So you've heard where I make the joke on this show that friends don't let friends use the portal, right? But we're learning. And I think that I'll want to be able to script this so that we can tear it down and then bring it back up when we're doing the show. So
absolutely.
I'm just going to review and create because I don't.
That AZD project may help us with some of that.
Right. Exactly. So create. Interesting that it estimated 2 minutes. So, I've never done this before.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Did we lose you? Did I lose you?
You know what? I accidentally.
Oh, okay.
I think I muted myself for a second there. Sorry.
Gotcha. No worries. I
I'll
was
be
checking on my
interested
stuff
now.
and
Yeah, I'll be interested now in seeing like how do you get started? What's the next step? What is the tooling to use? Is it there's probably tooling in the portal, but is there good tooling to use outside the portal?
tooling for building, scripting this out, or
Well, not the scripting of the resources, just like, okay, now I have a Cosmos DB. What does it feel like to put some data in there and to retrieve it? Like these are the basic first steps, right?
exactly. And what extensions do you have inside of your Visual Studio Code so that we can connect up to those?
Probably not. Is there one for Cosmos DB? So, I mean, I
It's
have
all
this.
Azure databases. Yeah.
So that's cool.
Interesting. Yeah.
I'm wondering if Azure Data Studio is another place to look too.
Yeah, definitely. I believe that will connect you up there as well. So, I mean, if you have, which is a similar looking IDE to Visual Studio Code, but it is its own standalone install. There you go.
It's probably been a while.
So you should be able to, in the bottom section, do a connection to Azure.
Right.
There you go. And then be able to see all your data sources that live up there.
Wants me to refresh the credentials. Let's see what it's talking about there. But it wants to do it on a different screen, which doesn't help me. So there we go. Have to do all this off screen. Didn't ask me for any credit. Didn't ask me for any credentials though. I thought it might. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this back here. And that orbital Cosmos DB is showing up.
Okay.
I don't know what that means yet. In fact, I haven't gone back to look at. Oh, it says it's complete.
Well, it's ready. There you go.
So if I say go to resource, I'm probably going to get some information here in the portal. Oh, there's more to do.
Well, it kind of puts you down the path of, all right, you got this compute engine that's ready to go for Cosmos, but you can't really do anything until you have a container inside of it.
Right. Okay. So even like going to Data Explorer isn't helpful because, well, first of all, I got this video. That's cool. But, oh, I guess you could create the container here as well.
Exactly.
Okay. So I can do that. Create a new database. All right. I don't know if that's a good name for it, but we'll go for it. And then a container ID, unique identifier for the container, used for ID-based routing through REST and all SDKs. A lot of times I don't know what to name these things, you know?
But I mean, those are self-descriptive, so for now they're fine.
Now, partition key. Choose a property in your document. It's a wide range of values and evenly distributes. And then yeah, so it's required.
You do need a partition key. Choose a property in JSON document that's widely
I can sort of understand what they're saying here is you're going to have a JSON document, and what's the value that would be best to use where hopefully everything's not bunched up so it doesn't create enough partitions for you.
Right.
Because I could see that. I could see, like, let's say you choose the wrong thing, and wrong is probably a relative term. And so it doesn't create a lot of different partitions because it feels like, oh, these are all bunched together. They're going to want to be close to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But in our case, I don't know, maybe the meeting date or something. Or just the ID. Like they even say ID is fine.
Yeah. I mean, ID, I think that's usually where I kind of default to. So maybe.
Now, do you have to put a slash? Like I can't just say ID. It actually if I don't put the slash, if I just start typing,
it'll do it for you.
It did it for me. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't remember what the max was here.
1,000.
Okay. All right. I think it'll enable. I think all this it'll start. It'll work. So I'm going to say okay.
Yep.
Hope this doesn't take too long. It does say successfully created database. At least there's a little thing down here. Let me go back to Azure Data Studio, and let's try creating a connection to it, just because I'm curious.
Sure.
It looks like I can find it, perhaps. Oh, look at that. I need an extension. Okay, sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Add it. Oh, it's doing some stuff. Okay, it looks like it added it. Now, does that mean I have to go start over, perhaps? Say that I want to add a new connection. Yeah, it kind of looks like it sort of started me over. And it seems to kind of like all of this stuff. So if I say connect, okay. That's kind of neat. There's orbital DB. Here's orbital container.
And it looks very similar to what you see in the portal there.
Yeah, and the portal seems to be ready to go.
You just need a way to create an item there.
No items, yeah. Now,
there's a new item at the top.
There's a new item button. So this is interesting. I added ID. I wonder if that was I wonder if that was a bad idea. But let's say that we have the description, right?
Yep.
Or actually, what was one of the first things is maybe like the title.
Title, yeah.
And we'll say, just because this is happening next month, we could say, what's new in .NET 9 release party or something like that. And then the date of it might be, of course, I forgot the thing. The date might be, it'll be after .NET Conf. Just, again, this is all 100% made up. So let's just say it's the 15th. I don't even know what day of the week the 15th is. I don't know if that's really how I want to put a date in, or if I want to use the JavaScript ISO date time. I don't know.
I think it's...
Maybe we don't worry about that right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Either way, we should be able to do a to date from whatever we're pulling in.
Okay, and then description, .NET 9 just been released At this meeting, we will explore new features and spell it wrong. Not that I should worry too much about it. And watch the best of .NET Conf, something like that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's a good start, maybe.
I think so. It covers a good bit of the pieces.
I need to replace it with a document ID.
Probably need the only other thing that we would add that we talked about is a speaker. Right.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. I really don't know if long-term this is a good key.
Yeah.
And there's other things that we may want to do differently later. Like, for example, is this the kind of thing where you say speaker name and we can say or is this an array, right?
Maybe. Right. Probably. Or could be.
I don't know that we have to get this right at the moment because we're kind of learning, but there's probably no comma at the end of this. Yep.
Okay. Let's see where you're going there.
Probably more complicated than it needs to be to start, but that's okay.
That's okay.
So I'm going to say save. And what I'm interested in is what happens here. I don't know if it didn't like that or if maybe this should have been here. I don't know.
I think our idea was that it was going to be there, right? So replace with a new key value. Because you could change the ID on line 3. I don't think you can change the ID on line 2.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it didn't like that.
Oh, wow. Interesting, because it changed the partition.
Replace with new partition key value.
Before you save it.
Yeah, or I could also put in a value here. Oops. I don't know if that first ID on line 2 is necessary. I'm just not really sure. It won't let me make a new item. Is that because of this?
Because you're in edit mode, you gotta get rid of your changes, or now you can do a new item.
I hear what you're saying is that maybe calling it ID was a mistake. Oh, actually, I see. Upload item. It hasn't even been uploaded yet.
There you go. Oh. Now you're good.
Am I?
Well, you could create a new item again if you wanted to. Yes. But your ID for the partition is still going to be that. So you might have to go into the database settings and change the partition. Possibly.
Yeah, you can see I'm definitely new to this here. So I wonder, though, am I clashing with something that was built in because I told it to use ID as the partition key. And so it's like, well, wait a second, I'm already using ID for something else.
Well, there's two IDs. You have the capitalization is important. So one is lowercase I and the other is an uppercase I. And those are two separate properties.
Right. I wonder if I should have just like used title or something, even though that might not be a great choice.
Right. Or
so yeah,
honestly, if you'd have done lowercase ID, that might have been enough.
Right. Yeah, that might have been good. Okay. So anyways, now I don't think anything's been uploaded.
No, definitely not. So uploaded would mean if you have your own JSON doc and you want to upload that.
Oh, okay.
All right. You can do those.
So we're saying this item is in there right now.
Correct. If you were to go to your Data Explorer, on your box, you should be able to see that record. You might have to refresh it, but if you click on the databases, yeah. So there's your container, and run that.
Right.
There you go.
So there it is.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a mess, but it's there. Interesting. Very interesting. So it's already 8:55. So I think the goal was to try and see how do you create an API in front of this using the data API builder. And definitely probably have to sort this out a little bit. But that was an introduction to both Cosmos DB and a no document database, which I haven't used in a long time. It's been a while. I did something with MongoDB years ago.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember what the project was specifically. I think what it was is I was using an API to read like metrics from a third party, and I was doing it like once a minute, and then those metrics became data points and I could plot them on a graph.
Okay.
And because I felt like I didn't really need a relational database for just this event that I was gathering every minute, that I just threw it in a MongoDB, and then I would just say, okay, by default, take the last 100 of these and graph it whenever you hit the web page. And then if you wanted to narrow that down, you could say, well, now take them from here to here. And it worked. It all worked. But this was a long time ago, and I've forgotten a lot about it. So
that's all right. I think it's good. I think it's a good start. I think just in looking a little, and this might be something we talk about when we do the next show, is the way. So there's a couple. Data API Builder is kind of interesting with what it abstract or lets you kind of quickly put together in talking to your data sources. Going down the path we're going down now, all it's going to do is basically say, I've got this Cosmo database here, and I've got this static web app here, and Data API Builder saying, I got this. Mm-hmm. I don't even have to point it to anything, because under the covers, that's how those two things will talk to each other.
Right.
As long as I point the static web app connection to that data component, it's kind of already built in.
Right.
Which may work for us, because our data layer now is nothing more than it becomes very simple. The other thing is we don't get to see some of the cool stuff that Data API Builder can do, because we're not defining anything about how it talks to our data or how it pulls our data together. It also doesn't give us that API layer that we might want to be able to say, okay, this other application that wants to talk to our environment that's not hosted in a static web app, how do we let it leverage that data? So that might be something we come back and talk about next time, about how we might, is this still the path we want to go down?
Yeah, that's a good point, because the plan was, is there some API that could be reached by both the web app and perhaps a mobile app? So we want it to be flexible enough. It just seems like what that Data API Builder product is there for is if you're kind of doing that same boilerplate you have a database with resources, and you're going to write all the methods to create them, to update them, to read them, that it just does it and says, okay, look, I'm done. And some of the things I'm interested in is that if you have some companion, if your API has that as a base layer, but then has some more complexity, how do you marry those together? And I don't know. So
right. And I think that was the cool thing that I wanted to use Data API Builder to see. But when you do that with Cosmo, there's some limitations on, right now it's still preview, but there's also some limitations on how that complexity, or how you might be able to hook those things together. That's all.
Okay. Well, I suppose we can look at that next time. And again, changes can be made, right? We're looking to see what we can use, but that was interesting to see all of that work there. I haven't tried. First time I've actually really tried using Cosmos DB, and appreciate your help walking through that. And I was actually pretty impressed that without really knowing a whole lot of what I was doing, I was able to read it in Azure Data Studio. I figured for sure I would run into a problem there.
Yeah. And
all right.
Yes, that's the beauty of it. It's very easy to get started. And now, it's some of the little nuances of and configurations that we do to make it what we want it to do. So yeah, all good stuff. Good start.
Cool. All right. Well, it is 9:00 here on the East Coast of the US. So I think we both probably have to prepare for morning stand-up. And that might mean everything from getting a cup of coffee or figuring out if I have something that I have to show today. So definitely appreciate everybody who joined us today, whether you joined us live, and I think a few people did, and or if you're watching in the future on YouTube at youtube.com/TheDevTalkShow. We're also on Twitter or X, which I'll probably never get used to, at TheDevTalkShow. And you can find us on Twitch or YouTube at those. And so we were live on both of those today. So in any case, Rich, let's get out of here if that's all right.
Yeah.
And see if I'm ready for all this stuff to go here. Yeah, I think so. Okay. Well, in that case, we will see all of you next time on the Dev Talk Show.